Hey y'all, it's Patty. Happy 2020, and we're back. I ended up taking a unplanned kind of 2-week vacation from the podcast because I was sick and nobody wanted to hear that hot mess being recorded and coming through your headphones or your car speakers. So there has not been a Monday Movie Minute and there has not been any Fangirl episodes for a little bit, but we are back and I have a really fun one now and some fun stuff coming out for you in 2020. This is officially going to be the first episode of season 2. Hey, look at that. There's 2 seasons of the No Guilt Fangirls podcast, and you're here for it. So let's do this.
Welcome to the No Guilt Fangirls podcast, where liking what you like is never a bad thing. Here's your host and head fangirl in charge, Patty Holiday.
Hey y'all, welcome to the No Guilt Fangirls podcast. I'm Patty Holiday, your host and head fangirl in charge. Today we're going to fangirl something a little meta. We're going to fangirl the fandom of podcasts. And I'm assuming that this might speak to many of you listening if you're like me and my guest today. We have a ton of podcasts on our daily rotation. On the show today is Krissy. And Krissy, you get the distinction of being one of my longest I met on the internet running friends.
Yeah, I was just kind of doing a little backlogging and I was like, wow, we've known each other for about 7 years now.
Honestly, yeah, I think when it all started for me is basically you were one of the first people that I ran into online and we, were chit-chatting in the groups back in the day. Like this is back when Team runDisney, which now has something like, 25,000 people in that group. It had like 300.
Oh my God.
You remember that? Like back in the day when it was just brand new and starting and you and I were some of the OGs back then, which just makes me laugh that we've been doing this for that long. But everybody, this is Krissy Murphy and she is also gets the distinction of being one of the few people that I know online that moves like I do. Because when I met you back then, you lived here in Virginia, right? That's
true. Yeah, I was thinking of that too. So it kind of just goes full circle. I guess we have a lot of things in common.
We do. And then you moved to Florida and now you're in Washington and I was in Texas, then in Arizona and now I'm here. Yeah. So, Krissy and I are, we're just going to live our lives, guys, and don't try to figure us out.
That's right.
All right. Now, Krissy's a wife, a mom, a runner. She's also a former Disney VIP guide. I'm sure there's a more technical term for that, which she can tell us. But, and as you can guess, we like Disney. This is like the running theme through my show. Everybody's got that Disney heart. And Krissy is absolutely one of those people as well. And currently she is a travel agent that specializes in Disney destinations. Please, everybody, say hi to Krissy and tell us a little bit about you and where we can find you online.
Sure. So as Patty mentioned, we met each other through a shared love of all Disney things, Disney running, all that kind of good stuff. I've loved Disney forever. I grew up in Japan and actually grew up with my home park being the Tokyo Disney Resort. Visited there probably every year since I was 2 years old. So yeah, it's been a thing in my life for a long time. After college, I moved to Orlando, was on the college program, did that for 2 semesters. Of course, stayed there a little bit longer because I loved it so much. Moved up through attractions, did guest relations and a VIP tour guide, which was an incredible experience. We moved away, moved again. Now we're back in Washington, as Patty said. And so I've been following her exciting adventures too. So I was really excited to try to think of something we could chat about that was not chatted about yet. So yeah, I came up with an idea and shared it with Patty. So we're excited to talk about podcasts. Yeah, before I go on too far, my handle on pretty much Twitter and Instagram is at Krissy M. Murphy. So keep it simple.
Yeah. And definitely come and find Krissy and follow her. And she's exactly right. She, I think you were probably listening to the last one that I had with Amira and Star Wars. And I get this little message in my inbox and she's like, hey, I know this might be weird, but do you want a fangirl podcast? And I was like, yes, I do. When can you be on? And here we are.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the podcast idea is just amazing because kind of like the currency, you can just kind of talk about things so quickly, but then kind of go more in depth than something that you see visually like Twitter or Instagram. So I love listening to the new topics that come up. And like you said, I always have like a full rotation of different things I'm listening to.
Now, currently, you don't have your own podcast, but do you have any plans or have you had any thoughts about jumping in and maybe having one on your own? And if so, what would your topic be?
Oh my gosh. So probably not in the next few years, at least. People that follow me know that I have two little ones, one that's turning 4 on Sunday, which is insane.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe she's 4, Krissy.
It's crazy. But I love listening to podcasts. I have been on guests on a couple different podcasts, and they've always been on different kind of topics. So if I ever were to do one, I have no idea where I would go. So I'll stick to the pros right now, listening to them.
Well, we appreciate it. And you got plenty of time before you got to do that. But just that I'd ask because they are addicting. They're addicting. There's just a lot of cool stuff to listen to and a lot of cool stuff to talk about. And I am personally surprised at how much I love them because I was not an OG podcast listener. So do you remember your first podcast? Do you remember how you started listening or when did the term podcast come into your lexicon that you were like, oh yeah, I like this. I like this mode of entertainment or education. I don't know. How do you use it? What's your primary source of podcasting? And then what's your origin story? How did you start?
I like that origin story.
Yeah.
So I actually started getting into listening to podcasts in 2011 because I was training for my first marathon and I needed something to listen to that was long. Just be engaged with, in a way that I could keep my mind busy, but it's not something so deep or hard to understand. So my first podcast actually was a Disney one, and it was WDW Radio, which is kind of like an OG podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So I was listening to that, but the episodes don't come out quickly enough when you're running a lot. So I had to kind of branch out and find some other ones to get into. And that's when I realized that almost all the shows on NPR are podcasts. Mm-hmm. So that was really cool because I love listening to NPR when I'm driving in the car or whatever. So I would be able to catch up on like This American Life and Wait, Don't Tell Me, those kind of good shows. But then I think the one that really drew me in, and this was, I believe it was in 2014 when Serial came out. And that was, I think, when everyone kind of was like, oh, what is this podcasting thing?
Yeah. And I had heard about Serial. Serial was the first one I heard about. I don't know why. I just never got into it. I think at the time, in my head, I thought, oh, I'm not into true crime. Like those kinds of things aren't that's not my entertainment. That's not what I want to listen to. And so I ignored it and I didn't pay attention to it. And then when I decided to start getting into podcasts, the first one that I deep dove into was actually Dirty John. And
it was a good one. Yeah.
It was a good one, right? And I was obsessed with Dirty John. And I was doing a lot of driving around, like, taking the kids places and stuff. I would come up with reasons why I needed to be in the car and go run errands so that I could listen to the podcast some more, right? And I surprised myself. I have discovered, like a lot of podcast listeners, because I think true crime is one of the biggest categories out there, or most listened to categories, is I actually really do like a well done true crime story by podcast much more than watching it on TV.
Oh, I agree.
I don't know, if it's the visuals or it's too real on TV or it's just too time consuming on TV, but it's something fun and easy to listen to if I'm just listening to it while I'm doing other things. I don't know what the answer is, but in fact, the other night I actually sat down and I watched a Dateline, and the whole time I was like, I wonder if this is on the podcast, because I'd rather just listen to it on the podcast. The same story, the same exact story, but I just wanted it on the podcast instead of on the video. So I don't know why. Isn't that weird? I think that's so weird.
Oh, I totally agree. I think I have several times heard a story on the news or read just an article or something. And I'm like, I wonder if there's a podcast about this, because I think it's just the format. It helps you understand it, but not like in a really like, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it just kind of sinks in better.
Yeah. Yeah.
The way you focus on it, maybe like maybe we're just like people that learn better listening. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it is. And it could definitely be the way you learn or who you are, how it works. I don't know. But yeah, I agree with you. Now, like I said, I wasn't a podcast listener, but Jane, who's been on the podcast multiple times, but she's also in our runner circles. So Jane. Jane was the one, she gets full credit for this. She's the one that came to me and said, you need a podcast. And I was like, wait, what's this podcast? What's a podcast? Yeah. Anyway, she made me start listening to something. I can't remember what the first one was, but I was like, oh, all right, you know what? I could do that. And then it kind of dawned on me that I had been actually a quote unquote podcast listener for years, because what I would do is I'd pull up people's like Instagram videos, IGTVs, or Facebook lives. I don't have time to sit and watch your Facebook live, but what I could do is I'd put my earbuds in, I'd pull you up and start playing and listen to you, but I'd put you in my pocket. And then I'd go around my day and I would fold my laundry or do my dishes or, whatever I needed to be. So I didn't have to sit and watch you. And I was like, you know what? That's all a podcast is it's video without watching it.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it, actually.
And so that's how it kind of clicked for me. And I went, oh, I am a podcast listener. I just didn't know I was. So now, of course, I'm all over into the podcast genre and took this big deep dive because, Jane thought she laughed. She makes me laugh. She was like, I want to talk on a podcast sometimes, but I don't want to run a podcast. So I want you to run the podcast and then I can be on it.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I'm like, hey, Jane, I am here to serve you, friend. So that's kind of my origin story. When it came out, I'm going to share some statistics here for those that are listening. These came out from I think it's almost a year old. So they need to update with 2019 numbers, but this is an Edison research survey, and they're saying that women are looking for content. So this was the other thing too, and that's also why Fangirls, came about. Was I wanted to speak to other women who have these fandoms and have these passions, and we can all talk about these things. And so while there's guys on the show all the time, it's still kind of women focused, right? And 34 million U.S. women are monthly listeners to podcasts.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? That's like a huge mind-blowing number. And since the whole idea that like moms make a lot of decisions in the household and purchase power, and we know from vacation point of view as vacation planners, a lot of times it's the moms and the families that are making those choices and that sort of thing. I thought, wow, that's a huge audience that are looking for entertainment, for content, for information, for a variety of things. I mean, you can get anything on a podcast now. There's cooking shows on podcasts. There's news shows on podcasts. I mean, that's, I think also what I love about it is, like you said, you see something on TV and you're like, oh, I wonder if that's a podcast. It probably is. Right. So you just have to, go and look, and the numbers are climbing. I think, over the last year, they said 20 million new listeners, which I am one of those people. People that didn't know what a podcast was in 2017, by 2018, they did. And they were, and it's growing. So it's kind of crazy. And you yourself, you've been doing this since 2011.
Right.
So you have been hanging in there for a really long time. How many podcasts do you think you listen to every week?
I knew you'd ask me. So I made a list, and there's currently that I'm kind of just tuning into is about like 14 or 15 different podcasts. And that's just kind of ones that I keep checking in on. There's always new ones popping up, or maybe some that kind of like branch off to other ones. Podcasts, and then some of the podcast networks, they'll have a commercial about a new podcast that they are producing. So, you find out about another one that you're going to get addicted to. So.
That cracks me up too, because, I when I first jumped in, I think I listened to every Wondery podcast that had ever been created before.
Oh, they're great.
They're great, right? So they were all in my, library. So then when they had a new one coming out, they cross promote it across all of them. So it teased me as a new podcast listener. I didn't know how this worked. I was super excited that there was all my shows, all these shows that I thought I had finished and listened to the end of, showed up, in my feed again as they had a new show that day. And I was like, oh, yay. Oh, yeah. No, it was just hi, here's a new podcast coming out. Oh, my gosh.
I'm so glad you said that, because I was just thinking I was listening to one that is it ended like a year ago, but it's like, it keeps having these updates because it's like one that's about a trial, and a trial updates will come out and it'll be like a 2-minute episode. And I'm like, I need more.
I need more. Yeah, but it just made me laugh when I realized that was what was going on. I was like, oh, I see how this works. Okay. So yeah, you learning every day, the ways of the world. So what are some of your favorites?
Oh my gosh. So I would say right now, my big one that I'm really into, and it's like, I kind of categorize my podcasts into what I can do while listening to them. So some of them are only when I'm running, because they have maybe bad language or something like that. I can't have the kids here. So I'll have it in my headphones. So those are kind of the podcast Slow Burn. The most current episode now is about Tupac and Biggie. Mm-hmm, and about that whole thing that went down. And it's amazing because, it was a few years back at this point now, and probably some younger listeners are like, yeah, those are real people, really? But, I was young when that happened. So I just knew it was a gangster battle kind of thing. And now I'm hearing all the things that led up to it. It's pretty amazing and just very intriguing. And those are the kind of podcasts I really like, because they're not only excellently reported, but they have music in them, and things. It just keeps it moving in just this really good pattern. And then you're upset when it's over, because you're like, oh, I thought it was 30 minutes, and it was 30 minutes. It went by so quickly. So that's a big one, and that I actually haven't watched listened to the first episode of Slow Burn, but I just recently, because I got into the third season, I went back to listen to the second season, which was about the Clinton impeachment, which was super relevant to listen to now, just, current event, parallel kind of things. So I realized I knew nothing about that. So I've been learning a lot. So that's something I just love about podcasts, that I can categorize ones that are going to teach me something, ones that are just going to entertain me, and some that do both, which is great.
Yeah, I think those are my favorite too, where something in the pop culture or, past events that, maybe I knew a little bit about, but I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to. And then now I can kind of do a deep dive and listen to the reporting on it. And they're fascinating. They're so fun. I tend to use most of my podcasts are for entertainment purposes. Every now and then I do have some that I listen to for the news, but most of them are for fun. And I'm not somebody who's looking to be inspired necessarily all the time, but as you guys can tell, if you listen to my podcast, I'm just about making life interesting. And so I tend to also listen to fellow podcasters who have that same kind of vibe and of interest. One of them that I really like to listen to is the Stinger podcast. This is two ladies who also do TV and film, critics and whatever. And they're fun because I like it when they don't agree. They fight a little bit. And I'm like, fight. So that's always entertaining. And then there's these two guys. I don't even know how I found them, but it's the podcast is called On Wednesdays We Wear Pink. And it's great. It's great. And they do a fantastic job of talking about how the movies and the shows that they saw as kids or were not allowed to see as kids and then saw as adults, how that impacted or influenced, their lives, or how pop culture in general influences. And it's just a neat. It's neat. And they're a little bit younger than me. Well, a lot younger than me, but but I think that's part of it is I really like hearing this other generation talking about what they were excited about back in the day. And they're a lot of fun too. So those are two that I can tell you guys to listen to if you're looking for some recommendations. But
that's one of the coolest things, in my opinion, about podcasts, I think, is that you'll have these different genres. They'll have these different categories and different subjects, and then like majorly mass produced ones compared to like, a regular person starting a podcast right next to each other. That's like the coolest thing to me about podcasts.
Oh, I agree. And I think that, again, there's something for everybody. There's been plenty of podcasts where I loved the topic. I didn't care for the host. There's places, there's, that happens. And then there's places where I loved the host, but the topic isn't something I want to listen to every single week, so I pick and choose on that. Like, and I kind of feel like based on the statistics that I've been tracking for this one, that we get some of that on this show. And I knew that going in is that it would be very obvious that some people will want to listen to everything, but some people are going to be like, oh, I don't watch Stranger Things. I have no interest in that. I hate that show, and so they don't listen to that one. And that's okay. I'm not mad. I understand. We all like what we like. And that's, there's nothing wrong with that. Right. But yeah, I do find it, neat from a podcaster point of view also is that even though there's 80 bazillion thousand Disney podcasts, if I started one tomorrow, I know it would be different because it's my Disney podcast. It's the way I want to talk or I want to cover something. And, and that's, I think, what makes podcasting and this whole experience, just a lot of fun. Now, the 2019 podcast statistics that I did find show that multitasking is in full force. This is honestly the reason why I fell in love with podcasts, because I can multitask the heck out of my day by listening to a podcast at the same time. It's different than having the TV on in the background even. I can ignore the TV, I guess, but it's different for me to have that podcast on. But I will, like I said, turn one on and I will go do the dishes. I will go to the grocery store. I will be listening to podcasts as I'm shopping at the Aldi's, the statistics said that 59% have listened to podcasts while doing housework.
Oh, yeah.
52% listen while they're driving. 51% while they're cooking, and then 46% while they're going for a walk, which, like you said, you listen to it when you go running.
Oh, yeah. I have to listen to something. I'm always queuing it up the night before for an early morning run. What am I going to listen to tomorrow?
Yeah. I mean, it's just it's a great way to, multitask in a good way, not in a bad way, in my opinion, is when you can still get your information or your entertainment, but you're also, doing all these things that we have to do, especially as women. I know my day can get ridiculous. And so the podcasts make it ridiculous, but fun at the same time. And, I can't run and read. I can't run and read a blog post. I can't even run and watch a video on my, on YouTube. If it's just too small for me to try to concentrate on that as well. But I can definitely run and listen to a podcast. And, that's one of the things that I do too. There's, one of the news ones that I listen to every morning when I get out and I go and do my little 30-minute run. I will slip on the headphones and I'll cue that up. And I'm like, all right, give me the news so I can get this out of the way. So I feel like I feel like a productive member of society before I dive into my Disney world and ignore everything else. Now, what do you feel like, what would you like to see in 2020 from podcasts out there? Or I don't know, just what do you think might be on the horizon for podcasters?
That's a good question. I mean, because there's so many different types, I feel like different genres might be going in different directions. One trend that I've noticed that I really have enjoyed is if a podcast has a certain subject that doesn't necessarily have a path, a timeline, but they make one. So one podcast that I really got into this year it's kind of a more serious one is the podcast about 1619. And it's all about learning about the origins of slavery and just kind of the history and how it's kind of manifested in different things throughout history and how you see it today. It's seems like a really heavy subject, which it is. But they break it into different kind of chapters that make it easy to digest. And I mean, you can listen to them in the order that they produce them, or you can kind of, like you said, pick and choose, but then you might see subjects that you thought you were not interested in, but because you listened to another one, then you kind of want like to collect them all kind of thing.
Gotcha,
so then you want to hear everything. I think maybe that might be a direction people are going. So you can get kind of like a full circle of, I don't know, just knowledge of a certain subject. So like they have different guests that come on talking about things and different experts. So when it's kind of a serious, more academic subject, I think that's kind of a cool way for them to present. And I think I'd love to I think something I've noticed is there's a lot of chapters in history that we didn't really learn about when we were in high school. So podcast is a good way to kind of get back into it and hear from real subject matter experts and in a way that you want to learn about it. So that's my roundabout way of saying, I think that's a good way for us to learn new things that we should already know. I like it.
I would be down for finding some more of those kinds of things, taking something and kind of chunking it up like that, to listen to. Cause yeah, I think that's one of the hardest struggles that I have is that I will find a podcast where I like 1, 2, or 3 episodes, but I don't like a whole big chunk of them after, so I like a thread to go through them all, to listen to them all. Do you have any interest, or have you ever been to like a live show, a live taping of a podcast?
I haven't yet, but actually it's really funny because I love the idea of it because there's so many podcasts that I'd like to attend, like if they did have a live show, but a lot of times when they broadcast a live show, I don't want to listen to it. Like it's terrible. Like it just like
right.
The audio quality is bad. Like my number one pet peeve, I don't know why, but is when podcasts that become kind of popular have like a Q&A show.
Oh, yeah.
It's like listener questions. I'm like, I don't care about any of this. Like,
no, I don't listen to those either. No, I don't either. Isn't that funny? Okay. So point taken. I won't do a Q&A show, but no, I have that same feeling too. And I'm the same way with the live shows. Like I'm listening to, right now, I'm actually listening to, My Favorite Murder, and they have a live show out. And it's fun. And this one's fine. But some of them are not well done. And I don't like to listen to those either.
I mean, it's kind of funny because when I do kind of like, I don't know, this sounds weird, but like force myself to listen to one, it's kind of engaging because I'll be like talking back to it. Like, no, like, why are you guys doing this? Like, okay, so this is a great example. There's a podcast, that's called Nice Try. And this current season was about utopias. And they're talking about, all these different versions of utopia in history. So couple of them really stood out to me. Like one was about like Corning, New York, and like the Oneida silverware. Like you got to look this up. It's crazy. But another one was about like the biosphere and like how they thought that'd be utopia. And it was such a great season. But their last episode was about Walt Disney World, and it was horrible.
Oh, no.
Like everything they were saying was incorrect. Like so many wrong facts. And I was like, no, like I had to stop it. Like I couldn't even.
Well, that is one of the things with, about podcasts. Yes, I will be listening to something, particularly if it's Disney related. I'm like, you're wrong. There was, I was actually listening to a podcast, one of my friends did, and they had somebody on who was talking about runDisney, and it was all wrong, Krissy. It was all wrong.
You're like, no, like, what do I do? Like, should I write a strongly worded letter to you people? Like, this is not good. Will they publish like a correction?
I know. I hate to be like the person that knows it all, but some things I do know it all. And that was one of them, and that was painful to listen to. But yeah, no, I'm with you on that. That does drive me nuts too. But as a podcast creator, I can tell you I would love the feedback. And so you can always send me an email, find me on my blogs, find me on social media, and let me know if I said something wrong. Oh gosh, come correct me. It's cool. I mean, in a gentle, sweet manner, of course, because I don't want to get my feelings hurt. Well, Krissy, this was fun. And I really love that you came up with with this idea and that you were able to make the time to chat with me today. I know you've got to do some more momming and working and all of that. So thanks for coming on the No Guilt Fangirls podcast.
Thank you for having me. I was so excited that we were able to come up with a good topic.
Oh, yeah, this is great. And if you come up with another one, you know where to find me. All right, guys, if you like what you heard today, I would really appreciate it if you can leave a review, throw up some 5 stars on Apple. What that does is it kind of helps things in the algorithm. It tells Apple that you liked what you heard, and that means it will kind of show me to more people, which means we get more fangirls, which nobody likes to fangirl alone. So the more fangirls and guys, the better. And of course, if you can share the episode with some friends, that's always fun too. And I do appreciate you. Thanks for coming to the No Guilt Fangirl podcast today. And we will talk to you again real soon. Bye, Krissy.
See ya.